All right, it's Friday night. Time for an evidence-based triathlete podcast, and boy, we've got a special guest on tonight. We've got Brad Miles from Lever. Hey, Brad, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, great Friday night. I'm happy
Well,
to spend it with you guys. This is awesome.
yeah, well, and this is going to be fun because both Ted and I are very well engaged with body weight support system. Ted coaches and he uses the system. I've done a lot of research in this space. But before I get going too far, Ted, how are you? You're still enjoying the cooler temps.
I'm still enjoying the cooler temps. I was riding last night and I actually got really cold and I'm like, man, I was doing a zone 2 ride and like it turned into a zone 3 ride because I just had to warm up. So I'm
Oh, I hate
just
you.
bragging a little. I'm kind of excited actually. I actually just signed up. There's a race tomorrow. I'm going to do a race tomorrow. So they're running on the beach from one town to the other and it's 6 miles.
Oh, cool.
And there's like 1,000 people in this race.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty excited. I literally just signed up last night, but I don't know because it's a bunch of creek crossings you got to do. You know, when go a long way along the beach, there's creeks. So I asked the race director today, I'm like, so like, what do you do? Like, he's like, you just get your feet wet. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm a triathlete. I'm always throwing water on my head and it gets into my feet anyway. So I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going to be okay, but I'm looking forward to that tomorrow.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, hate is a strong word, but I do hate you for being in such a wonderful place and cooler temps. So,
I know. I like. I'm trying not to rub it in too much to people, but yeah, that's.
yeah,
And then the other crazy thing was, this week, and I shared it with you. I was quoted in GQ magazine,
there you go.
and that's just crazy to me. To be in GQ magazine. So like, obviously there was no picture. That's
Yeah,
why for those of you that know me, I'm not the best looking guy in the world, but it's gonna be really awesome now. It's like, oh yeah, when I was in GQ magazine.
there you go.
Yeah, I'll have that. I'll have that forever. So I think that it's been a pretty cool week.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Yeah, it's great to get that recognition out in an article like that, and it was on alcohol. So that was neat that you covered that topic, which I know is close to your heart, and so that was good to get some information out there.
Yeah, awesome.
Let's talk body weight support.
Let's
Yeah,
do it. Where
Yeah.
would you like to begin? From the beginning?
Let's begin in the beginning. So I am really interested in hearing the story of how you came up with this system and even your background around with running, because I have not used this system. Ted has used it, but I've used other body weight support system from running in the water, lower body positive pressure treadmill. So I'm really interested in learning more about this myself. So give us from the beginning. How'd you get this started?
Yeah. Well, again, appreciate you guys having me on. This is gonna be a lot of fun. So, really to cut to the chase, I ran at a D1 university down in Texas, and we were super fortunate to have two Alter G treadmills just for the track and cross country programs, and not many schools get that outside of the D1 kind of sphere, just because they're expensive, 60, 70, $80,000. And it takes a big budget to keep them up and running maintenance wise as well. But so that was where I first really was introduced to the concept of body weight support and really understood like why to use it. I thankfully was never injured in college, but I had a lot of my teammates that were. So they would use it a lot for their return to run, protocols, different injuries they were coming back from. But really for me, what was great was my coach started introducing it to us in two ways: in recovery and also in some like longer tempo threshold type style workouts at a reduced body weight. Um, and so that's where I first really kind of got hooked a little bit. I was like, this is pretty cool. Unfortunately, you have to stop every like 5, 6 miles to go to the bathroom in the Alter G. So that's not super fun, but just with all the pressure on your bladder. But other than that, it was a really good experience. And I understood the benefit of it. Coming out of school, handful of years later, I moved up to Boulder, Colorado. A lot of my friends, it's just the town of Boulder, are Olympians, professional athletes, really high level triathletes. And anytime they got injured, it either cost them an arm and a leg to rent out time on the Alter G, or they really couldn't even book out time because there was only one or two in the Boulder area. And so, they had ran out 60 minutes, really expensive. And I mean, if anybody's had experience with it, kind of takes 5-ish minutes to get in and 5-ish minutes to get out. So you only have like a 45 to 50-minute run, even if you block out an hour. And that's really what got the wheels turning in my head of, okay, this technology is so beneficial. Why is it so inaccessible? And so my neighbor and I, at the time, he's my co-founder now. He's on the engineering side. And we just started thinking like, okay, there's got to be something else out there, because a lot of our friends were getting injured coming up into pretty big world cycles. The Olympic cycle was coming up in a year as well. So people were training pretty hard. And so, yeah, that kind of what got our wheels turning of can we make something that is a consumer friendly product and accessible and affordable for anyone around the world to use at their home, at the gym. So the kind of key features, right, as I was kind of talking right there, was affordability, the ability for it to be portable, and then just really easy and a kind of like like a no-brainer type of product that's just very easy to put together and not complicated. So really, we kind of started working on that and came out with a device that's somewhat similar a few iterations ago. But what we came up with today is we have a treadmill attachment. So our body weight support system is a treadmill attachment. It sits on the arms of a treadmill. It takes about, and Ted, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it takes most people around 2-ish minutes to set up, especially once you're comfortable with it. It sits right on the arms, and then you can reduce up to 45 pounds of body weight. And so the nice part of it too is we do work with a lot of athletes, a lot of triathletes that go on training camps and travel a lot. And so it weighs 10 pounds or less. And so they can kind of take it with them. It fits into a bike bag. You can bring it onto an airplane, and you can really bring it around with you anywhere, wherever you're training. So yeah, that's kind of the original days. Hopefully I hit everything.
No, and I'll echo it. It is very easy to set up. Like that's the other thing. It's very low bar to entry to set it up. I got to be honest with you. Mine, I don't even know how many minutes it takes because it's always on my treadmill. Like it's just
great. Yeah.
I think I've had it for maybe 3 years now, and it just lives there. So
yeah, and that was kind of part of it too, is like we wanted it to be frame based, and so that you could still run in the middle of the treadmill if you weren't using our device and you still want to use your treadmill, you could still keep it on the treadmill on the arms and still like get used to the treadmill if you didn't want it. Just because, I mean, that's big for PTs and their floor space and things like that as well, especially athletic programs too. But yeah, so no, that's great. That's a good point, Ted.
Yeah. So this is obviously I love the impetus of it. So ultimately, when you started out, you obviously started working with these very high level athletes. When did it kind of dawn on you that, you know what, this could actually be something for like the age group athlete, the more the mass market rather than than truly just the elites?
You know, our hope was always that it would be a mass market. And we're starting to see the signs of that for sure. I think we have a long way to go from an awareness standpoint. We have a long way to go just in education as well, because, you know, let's say body weight support through like the AlterG and our type of functionality has been around for 24-ish years, 22, 24 years or so. And not too many people know that it even exists. And so we have a lot of work to go on the awareness side of things and education side of things. But the people that get it and the people that use it and the light bulb goes off, that's the fun part for us, is just seeing how beneficial it is for somebody coming back from, you know, the common running injuries. We could start there. There's a lot of other things that we could talk about, but, you know, plantar fasciitis and Achilles tendinopathy, shin splints, stress fractures, really any common running injury, you know, it's a no-brainer for athletes to come back from that. And I think that's where the word of mouth is starting to help us out a bit. We've been in business for a little over 5 years now. And with the emphasis on the last 2 to 3 years, we're trying to more so reach that mass market rather than just the high-end elites.
I love this. And, you know, it's, you know, I've been an athletic trainer taking care of injured athletes for 30 years. And I think the biggest mistake people make when they're returning to athletics and returning to sport is they don't load themselves appropriately. And we didn't always have the bridge, right, between you're on a table to you're running. And the bridge was walking. right?
Mhm.
And well, athletes don't really like to go for a walk. I hate to tell you that to everybody, they want to run, and the basketball player, they want to run, the whatever the case may be. And so the bridge was the piece that was missing, that you had to continue to load and load progressively. And that's why I also, I'm obviously a fan of the system, because you mentioned you could take away 45 pounds. You could also take away 5.
Mhm.
And that's the key to this, is like right now, if you have an injured athlete, say with a stress fracture, you take away 45 pounds, then the next week you take away 35 pounds, and then the next week, and you progressively load the tissue, and the tissue becomes stronger progressively. And I mean, that truly is the key to good rehabilitation.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think you all have you have a good product on your hands. But you're right, the awareness is big, because even when I reach out to some of my colleagues in athletic training and I tell them about this, they've never heard of it.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
I know
that's
you've been to shows and you've tried,
yeah.
but it's an awareness thing.
You mean they
It-
haven't read our papers?
Exactly.
So what's interesting is I found body weight support similar to how Ted's talking about in terms of getting injured, but I found running in the water, and that was the early '90s. And then later on, lower body positive pressure treadmills started to become more available, and that's where we went down the research path. And
Mhm.
one of my colleagues, Dr. Kenji Matsumoto, over in Kyushu University, we've done a lot of work on running in the water, body weight support, lower body positive pressure treadmills, and so forth. So I'm going to actually ask you some questions, because there's some things we don't know about this. How long does it take someone to get used to running on the lever system once you start unloading them? How quickly do they adapt to running with body weight support?
I think it's a good question. I would say if you're taking off that 10% to 15% immediately, like it's feels very natural to be running. If you are coming back from an injury and then you're starting more around the 45,
Mm-hmm.
um, you have to still remember some cues. You're not just out there bouncing. You have to still focus on turnover. You're not just going to be floating on this like little cloud and having a fun old time. Like, you have to remember some of the cues. And so I think that's the biggest thing if somebody's taking the max weight off, is to remember the cues of, oh, this is how you run. Your cadence of 45 is not okay. And so, yeah, but if an athlete is healthy using our device from a performance standpoint, and they're taking 10%, 15% of their body weight off, it's very natural from a running position. And also, that's one of the reasons why we designed the device like we did. It's all pulley based. And so the pulleys sit on the bungee, and you still have access to all four planes of motion on a treadmill. And so you can go forward, backward, side to side. So it is very comfortable, like a normal running pattern. Um, and yeah, anyway, I would say that's the big thing, is the less weight you take off, the much more natural it feels right out of the gate. But I wouldn't say it's not a foreign feel
Love it.
at any point.
My next question is for both of you, actually. So, when you prescribe running with the lever system, and you have some body weight support, what speed do they pick? Do they pick the speed that they want to run a race in, or do they go faster than that or slower? How do you folks do that? And this,
Yeah, I can give kind of my 2 cents, but I mean, Ted's written more training plans around our system than I have. And so I'll let him finish it up. But I think the big thing is what's the workout, and I think that's just coming back to the basics of like, what's the purpose of this run today, and accomplishing that. A cool little anecdote is, if you take about 10% of your body weight off, you can run at 30 seconds per mile faster at the same heart rate. And so if you just remember that as you kind of like begin this process, that's a really good place to start. And so if you're planning on going out for an easy day, and an easy day is 8-minute pace for you outside, but now you're doing it at 90% body weight, do that, run at 7:30 pace, and you'll probably see about the same heart rate on the treadmill.
I love
So
that.
I'll come at it from a few different lenses. So, and Brad, I don't know how much you guys have marketed this side, but really people are into the polarized training, right? And everyone's talking about zone 2 and zone 2 training. If you go onto the forums and you start really getting deep, the number one problem with zone 2 training is I can't keep my heart rate down. That's the number one problem. Like, and people are like, oh, I feel like when I'm running 13-minute miles that I'm not running anymore. And so this is a big common complaint. So I've used this, it's top secret, to take, like, let's keep you running where you're comfortable, let's say at 9-minute miles. And your heart rate is, I don't know, 160, and I want your heart rate at 140. Let's just keep taking body weight off until you get to 140. Now you have the relatively same mechanics, but you're doing your zone 2 work. And so it might be a really long, slow run that we might be prescribing it for that purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Then on the performance side, I'll also look at like a tempo run. I know you mentioned this already, or speed work. Well, that's where the most risk of injury is. The research is very clear on this. And I can tell you specifically with people that I've coached and people that, and even myself, like that's where I tend to get injured is on, speed work. And the typical training plans you're going to do like a 40-minute run and then end with a 30-minute tempo run, or just below race pace, 3x10, just below race pace. So you're fatiguing yourself and then trying to build up fatigue resistance. Well, then you get hurt at that point. So I really am a fan of using it for tempo and or introducing new speed, especially like at race pace or just above race pace. So you can decrease basically the risk of injury because you're decreasing the ground reaction force. The instantaneous ground reaction force goes significantly lower, but the neurologic system, as far as turnover is concerned, is still stimulated. Mm-hmm. I've done some really cool stuff where I've taken away, like for me personally, like taking away like 25%. How fast can I actually run?
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
What actually is my neurologic limit? And the funny thing is, it wasn't much faster than my 5K pace. I'm like, okay, good. Like that's actually a good thing. Like I'm really close to where that number is. But okay, now can I push it? Can I go even faster? And I wouldn't want to necessarily do that outside. And historically, how we used to do that stuff was running downhill. And that adds even more forces, mm-hmm. right? So I don't know. It's honestly, like as a coach looking at it, like there's so many things you could do with it. If you really think, think outside the box and you understand the biomechanics and you understand the physiology of what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think too, just on to that point, from a coaching standpoint, I think the really interesting thing that we're really starting to see is obviously treating every athlete like they are like their own selves, not just like putting people into buckets. And so, a lot of swimmers are using the device differently than people with running backgrounds, just because, they need to build up their bone density and that they lost when they were kids swimming all the time. And so they're using it a lot more and trying to build up their run volume to a certain point. They're also, kind of both fields, especially if you're coming back from whether you're coming back from an injury or not, are like splitting runs with the system. And so, if your body has a tough time handling an 18-mile long run, you've got an Ironman coming up, we'll do, your first 10 of them outside and then 8 of them on the system to finish up. And so, there's a lot of application and a lot of different use cases. But I'd say as far as like the speed stuff, I love seeing and what we're really seeing on the top end of the sport. And I'm talking, the number one ranked person in the Ironman series right now. He's using it a lot to really get his turnover going, but also to take that pounding off of his legs so that he still is fresher for his bike workouts. And obviously puts a lot of run volume in. So there's a lot to it.
Well, I love it. Well, another follow-up question to what you just talked about, and I was going to ask this, and it's interesting, running after running on the treadmill with body weight support, do you prescribe it? Is that something, and again, I'll look at both of you for how you practically use this. Is there some value of running with body weight support and then running afterwards, or you spoke to running over ground first and then jumping on the lever to finish up some different sets? Which way do you folks both like to use this?
Well, I'll tell you which one's more fun.
Great.
Running at full body weight first is a lot more fun, and finishing at a reduced body weight is the way to go. But Ted, what are your thoughts? I made just
I
a
just
joke
wouldn't
there, but
prescribe it because people hate it. And it's I just can be completely honest with you. Once you go back and you reset this, you kind of recalibrate. It feels really. It doesn't feel great. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It doesn't feel great. However, I've done some stuff with intervals where you're kind of turning it on, turning it off.
Mm.
And so, and I would like, on your system, basically, going from like 1 notch to 3 notches and 1 notch to 3 notches. So I've done some stuff like that. Just once again, more for sometimes it's entertainment value, to be completely honest with you. But honestly, I'd love to see some research on like a running economy done like afterwards, like immediately afterwards. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I'll actually I want to ask Brad a question. So in your experience, have you come across some athletes that kind of get addicted to it?
Mm-hmm.
that's a great question. I would say so. Yes, to the feel, but again, no, probably to the treadmill. Right. I think that's like the limiter. There's and also we definitely don't recommend always running at a reduced body weight. And so I know there are some athletes that have to do that just to get to a starting line. And frankly, there's plenty of athletes that do that just to get to the starting line, a couple of knee replacements, things like that, but they still want to be involved in the sport. So they'll train with it 100% of the time, except for races. But yeah, we don't recommend it just because your body does need that pounding outdoors. But it is a good feeling, and also just to kind of answer John's question real quick too is, I use it personally. And like one of the things that I played around with is, especially if I'm doing longer workouts, like 16 by K, I did on the treadmill, a couple, 2 months ago. And I did the first 10 at full body weight. And then I did the last 6 at a reduced body weight. And I ran again, 30 seconds per mile faster. And I took 10% of my body weight off. And I think the cool thing with the system too, is it really does help your form and kind of those, it's again, it's really kind of cool how it works. I don't know if it's just naturally, because we didn't think too much about it as we were designing the system as far as from a gait standpoint, but it does help your gait. And so being able to finish with proper form when you're probably more fatigued than normal is a really beneficial aspect to the system too.
Well, I love that, and I know you and I spoke earlier in the week about the natural movement, and you actually designed the device so that upper body movements weren't interfered with. And I'm wondering, as before you went to market, how many iterations of your design did you actually have before you finally settled on one that you were going to go to market with?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely did a handful. So when I say handful, probably, well, if you talk about nearly our first one, it was flag poles and wooden posts, which frankly worked a little bit too well, which we were like, oh, we might be onto something. But no, once we kind of came out with like the frame design that we have today, there were certain things, attachment to the treadmill that was really important, treadmill arms, and then just the different ways, and Ted's may not even have this, honestly, but we changed our front and back connector points to be able to be adjustable. And so I don't know, Ted, if yours is adjustable on the front or back.
Yeah.
So early days, maybe even 3 years ago, those were fairly fixed. And so they were waist width apart on the front and the back where the bungee went. But now they're completely adjustable, so they can slide across the crossbar, and that really helps people's arm swings not interfere with the bungees now, because they can kind of customize where those connecting points go. Yeah, and again, Ted, I don't know if yours even has that 3 years ago. So
it does. I think it was one of the first ones that had had it, and it's nice because like you can even switch. Like you can go like a little narrower in the front, a little wider in the back, or either way. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a technical question, and I hate to put you on the spot, but my iterations got the bars that sit on the kind of, I don't know, they're kind of like a little crossbar that sits on the arm of my treadmill, and I always hit my hands on it because I was a little bit wider. So just in full disclosure, I removed them, and then I actually permanently drilled into my treadmill So
That's a commitment.
my lever is permanent on my. It's funny, like I never take it off. It's literally permanently attached. It's once I permanently attached it too. It even felt more stable, which was awesome. You know, and so if I had a clinic or something like that, I would definitely permanently attach it, which you know you can do. Obviously, like it's just a little hack I did.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we have made a few modifications to what you're talking about in the current model. The new model that we came out with last November, though, I don't know if you've been following, but we have a backpack version. And so essentially think about your unit that is all telescoping and all one piece, and it fits into a backpack. And actually, I've got the backpack right here. But yeah, so it fits into this
Oh wow.
lever backpack, and which is great for people that like take it to the gym and travel a lot with it. And those come essentially with like more rounded mounts to the arms. And so they don't have any of the crossbars hanging out like you're talking about.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, there's more flex to it, but yes.
Well, I love it. Well, I wanted to get a little bit in the business side and what's in the future for Lever. What are any new products that you can disclose, but I'll talk about?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're constantly looking at things with the same mindset that we took to the body weight support space of, what devices are out there that are really beneficial for athletes. Maybe not really well known, but really beneficial for athletes, but at a price point that doesn't make sense. And how can we kind of help bring this into like the everyday use for an athlete? We're also looking at ways just to, again, our whole focus is recovery and performance on both sides. And our current unit does that for both, recovery, rehab, and performance for athletes. So we're looking at products also right now to bring in, to help athletes in every single aspect of like the training cycle. And so, there's going to be a few things coming up here in a handful of months, but nothing I can kind of disclose just yet. So,
oh, that's awesome. I love it. Well, as an innovator, I'm sure you're always trying to come up with something new. I would even think that somehow you've got to connect with Training Peak so that you can get the right training stress score in there as well. But
yeah. That and be added as an equipment on Strava would be great. Trying to do all those things, So we have a few training plans on Training Peaks now. So specific protocols, working through like with physical therapists to come back from very specific injuries. So we're trying to do a few things with Training Peaks right now, but that would be cool. A TSS, that would be pretty sweet if we could have that set up.
It is hard, right? Because like if I have an athlete doing that, it's like, well, how much percentage of their TSS do I take off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
So if they were 10% off of body weight, do I take 10% off their TSS? Because, well, maybe it's less load on their legs. It's not maybe less load on their cardiovascular system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's some thought that actually goes into that. And we could measure like running economy, like, on a metabolic cart, but that doesn't necessarily mean the stress on the legs, right? So it's multifactorial. So it'd be, I think, really a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, Ted, we may have just given John 2 research projects from here to work on. But
well, I love it because actually this is helpful to me for some of the projects that we're doing now, because one of the questions that we're in the research world sort of talking with each other about is how long do we need to let someone run with body weight support before we can collect data that we feel is stable data at that point. So it's a funny question, but it impacts us as research. But then we're also interested in what happens to running form after you run with body weight support. So this, Ted, you already hit on the project. So I should have had you sign an NDA beforehand. So I love this.
I do have just one last question, Brad, for you. Is what are you all doing as far as research?
Yeah, good question. So I sent our 2 kind of intro research studies. First one was a pilot study to John this week. One was through University of Colorado, and then the second was through University of Memphis. We're in the middle of one right now with a pretty big group over in Germany that is doing some research on sprinting and body weight support. And their treadmill goes up to, I think they said 30 miles an hour. And so that'll be an interesting one. They're taking like their highest end, like elite sprinters in Germany and taking them through a pretty cool study. And then, I think we're always open to doing more. We have, obviously an endless list of things that we're trying to study and get done. And yeah, it's all about finding the right team to do it as well. So, yeah, that's why also this conversation with John earlier this week was a good one. So
No, I love it, and this is such a great topic because, as Ted, you said right in the beginning, and I actually think you said it too, Brad. Running with body weight support, there's a lot of advantages to it, and it's just a matter of teasing out some details that actually make it effective for everyone and efficient in terms of training time too. So, I love this topic, and so this is fun. I really appreciate you coming on this podcast to share a little bit more. I guess one more announcement we have: you're going to offer a discount for the club.
yeah, absolutely. We just got kind of formed the partnership this week, right? And so it made sense to come on to the podcast this afternoon. But yeah, we are doing a 20% discount for the Las Vegas Tri Club. And I think you're getting that set up, John.
Yep.
So yeah, you guys can find the information there. But no, we're really excited. We love, I'm a triathlete. I love triathletes. And so kind of working close with this industry and this community is a blast. And so, Ted, appreciate you kind of furthering what you're doing with your athletes and teaching us along the way, because you already hit it pretty head on there. It's like this space needs so much more education than it currently has. And so just having people and coaches to continually flesh that out for us and also bring them to us is incredible. So thank you.
Welcome.
Love it. Well, thank you for the discount code. And for members, you got to go to your webpage and log into your webpage, and then you'll see the discount code in the member discount code page. Well, Brad, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on, and this has been a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, have a great weekend, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks, Ted. You enjoy that cooler weather.
I will.
All right. Talk soon.